Welcome to Out of My Mouth, the program where raw thoughts meet unfiltered conversations.
Join us as we dive into the depths of human experience, where we share stories, perspectives, and insights that just might challenge the status quo.
Get ready to laugh, cry, and ponder the world around you like never before. This is Out of My Mouth.
The views and opinions of our guest and hosts do not necessarily reflect those of New Thought Media Network, or any organization we may be affiliated with. Here at New Thought Media Network, we welcome freedom of speech and courageous conversations. There are many topics that can be difficult to navigate. Challenging the status quo and engaging in lively debate is important to expanding our understanding of one another, and life in general. Creating a peaceful world doesn't happen because no one disagrees, it happens from a willingness to understanding one another. In our programming, we strive to expand consciousness and assist people in creating remarkable lives. Your comments are welcome at info@ntmedia.org.
Good afternoon, or good morning, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. You're watching Out of My Mouth, and whatever comes out, who knows? Conversations for a changing world, and we do have courageous conversations here. I'm Barbara Jean.
And I'm Cheryl Rogers.
And I will begin today with our land acknowledgement. And as we gather today, we acknowledge that we're standing on the historical land of the Wendat peoples, and more recently that of the Mississaugas and the Haudenosaunee nations, now home to many diverse First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island. May we walk alongside our Indigenous family, recognizing our shared stewardship of the earth. Let us carry forward the spirit of unity, understanding, and resilience that we've been reminded of through our reflections. Let us hold in our hearts the intention to learn, to support, and to advocate for justice and sovereignty for us all. In doing so, we acknowledge our interconnectedness and the strength that comes from standing together in truth, respect, and love. May this intention guide us in our actions and thoughts, inspiring us to contribute to a world where the dignity and rights of all are honored. Let us be mindful of the role we play in this ongoing journey towards healing and unity. And by making this acknowledgement, we strive to be allies and take an active part in reconciliation by honoring the land, the history, as well as the unique heritage and culture of the Indigenous peoples. This fosters our commitment to create a world that works for the highest and best good of all life. Please take a moment to acknowledge your personal commitment to the land you are on and the path you choose to walk going forward. Miigwech.
Miigwech. Thank you, Barbara Jean. It is my honor and privilege today to introduce you to someone who is normally our co-host, but who is courageously stepping forward and sharing her story with us today. Marg Dupuis. Marg is a lifelong learner, explorer, seeker with a can-do attitude. She's a yoga student for over 40 years, a Reiki master, and has been a practitioner of other modalities. She's inspired by spiritual mentors such as Wayne Dyer, Neil Donald Walsh, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, and so many more. Marg has served on the board of directors of Unity Kitchener, is a co-facilitator of spirit groups, a member of the leadership team at Unity Kitchener, and co-hosts this show. Today, being that it's Mental Health Month, Marg has kindly agreed to share her own experience with this topic as our guest. One more little tidbit of information on Marg is that she's widely known to poke the bear. When I looked up poking the bear, the Urban Dictionary says to act in such a way that has a good but not definite chance of causing trouble, to stir things up. And Marg loves to do that, and she's very good at it. So we love her for it, and we're excited to have her as our guest today. Welcome, Marg.
Hi, Marg.
Hi, thanks so much, Cheryl. That's quite the introduction, and I like that you threw in that I am known to poke the bear. I think maybe a few people would agree with you on that statement.
Mm-hmm. So, Marg, tell us about where your journey started. This is about denial of a diagnosis. So, how did the journey start to getting the diagnosis?
Well, thanks, Cheryl. Good question. And first, I would just want to say that I'm someone who aspires to live authentically. And today, I thought it was important to come out of the closet and speak about mental health challenges that I've experienced, to continue to live authentically, and hope that there might be some help for other people who maybe live behind the door and think that they can't experience or speak of their experience. I know there's judgment out there, probably not as much as I think there is.
Probably more, Marg.
Well, yes and no. When I have shared, Barbara, with a few people, I have shared about my past to some people, but not a lot. But there's been acceptance and inclusion and definitely support.
Awesome.
I've also been reluctant to share my diagnosis because I've heard people gossip about people who have this particular diagnosis. And so there's a label, and I feel and fear that I will be put in the diagnosis in this box of the diagnosis, as opposed to the whole person that I am and what I can contribute to. So I probably come back to more of that later, Cheryl and Barbara. But for now, answering your question, the journey. So as you mentioned, I worked full time. I did a number of different modalities, studied, admired different inspirational speakers. I read books, and I followed that path. And then my body, about 17 years ago, I'll say it failed me. So I went from somebody who would walk a mile for an hour, I should say, every day before work. So getting up at 6, very strong. And to a person who could have it was difficult to walk across the room.
Yeah.
And for 6 months, I fought to go back to work. I had a supportive working community, and they were not pushing me out the door. I just could not physically do that, no matter what I tried. And then depression set in. I might cry. And so depression, not me. That's not me. That's for somebody else, because I do all of these positive things. So how could I possibly be depressed? I worked with a doctor, 2 doctors actually, both of them helping me use natural products to bring me out of the depression. It wasn't working. And one of the doctors said, Marg, do you think you live and think in a balanced way? And I said, well, yeah. And he said, well, if you think natural supplements, etc., are the only way that would help you, perhaps, you're not thinking in a balanced way.
Mhm.
Pharmaceuticals are okay too.
Mhm.
So then the journey continued with starting medication. And it took a long time for medication to kick in. My body rejected a lot of the medication. And finally, after a lot of trial and error and a very patient doctor, she was able to come up with a cocktail that was effective for me. Before the treatment was successful, I was not suicidal, but I had suicidal ideations. I did not want to be here.
Mhm.
I didn't want to follow through with anything.
Mhm.
I almost jumped out of a car once because I was so anxious. Yeah. And so I'm very grateful that the medication worked. I'm going to stop talking now in case you have questions, and I'll come back to more.
Mhm.
Well, it's mental health, especially since COVID, has, I think, ramped up quite substantially. And part of, I sometimes think that part of the challenge is that we're not spending enough time in person with people, that we're not connecting in a way that helps us to actually feel supported, appreciated, admired, respected, whatever, because we're all by ourselves most of the time. Do you think that separation has improved or worsened the situation for yourself, possibly, or for others?
For myself, no, the separation has not had an impact on my mental health, thank goodness. As a matter of fact, it's because of Zoom, because of this show, because of spirit groups, etc. I feel like I've been thriving and growing and whatever.
Mhm.
However, I have heard others experience depression because of being what's the word, insular, um,
Mhm.
not connecting
Mhm.
with people.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I would like to go back to something you said, Mark, which both of you, you said that nowadays people are accepting and supportive, and I wonder if it's because of the people that you hang out with.
Mm.
That was the question I was going to ask too. Thanks, Cheryl, because
Yeah,
that's kind of where I was going.
because I can relate to everything you're talking about, right? I have the same diagnosis, and I've lived with it for years and years and years. And maybe not exactly the same, but in the mental health realm. Um, and like in the workplace, was it differently received? Did they know? Were you still working or were you not working? So those kind of questions for me. What environment were you in? Because as much as people talk about removing the stigma and Bell Let's Talk and all these things, I still feel that stigmatization.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, I feel there's a stigma, and I want to get the stigma out of my head. I want to be out there so that I'm seen by other people as well as myself as a whole person. So
Right.
Yes.
my diagnosis is not who I am. It is a part of who I am. And had I not accepted it, I I don't know that I'd be here, like, because I wouldn't have received the help.
Mm.
And so because of all of the treatments, the medications, et cetera, that were not successful,
Mm-hmm.
my doctor said to me, I need to try you on a medication for bipolar.
Mm.
And so I responded to it. I was reluctant when I was first told that I may have a form of bipolar. I was quite surprised.
Mm-hmm.
There's where the denial came in. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think so, not me.
Mm-hmm.
I had my own prejudice against that diagnosis because I'm not them. I'm not the people out
Mm-hmm.
there. That's not me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, again, I'm glad I accepted it because I've experienced the help
Mm-hmm.
that I needed. You asked me about the work environment, Cheryl. I never did go back to work because just time ran out on me, and now I find work in different ways.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And as far as the people I hang out with, I truthfully, not all people would I feel comfortable sharing this with.
Right.
I think
And
it's important, though, what you are doing, though, like to stand up and say, here's,
Mm-hmm.
because I think sometimes when we have something that, certain people in the world would perceive as a negative, right, as a problem, I'm broken, I'm flawed, whatever, all baloney. But I think sometimes it's like carrying around a backpack full of rocks, and it weighs a ton, and it's like holding us back in so many ways. But in the moment that we speak it, in the moment that we get it out of my mouth, right, out of my head through here, the minute I do that, then it's almost like I've taken the backpack and set it down. Like there's a light energy, because now I don't have to be afraid of somebody finding out,
mhm.
because I've talked about it and expressed, it doesn't define who I am. So
Mm-hmm.
for you, good for you. That's,
Mm.
I think my father was bipolar. I'm pretty sure he was never diagnosed, but I'm pretty sure, but his would have been severe bipolar.
Well, it's interesting because here the three of us are talking about this, and I didn't realize just how much we do have in common with it, in the sense that my father was diagnosed with bipolar, and he experienced the highs, he experienced the lows, and the highs were unreal, like a fantasy world, like it wasn't reality, right? And he would try and rope me into that. And that only really happened later when I was about 18. So that was a very difficult thing to manage. But just the three of us talking about bipolar is very interesting. And just before the show, we were talking about how many people have a mental health condition. And I think, Barbara, I think you said about a third of the population that is recorded to have a mental health condition, but how many more don't share it and don't speak up and
Or don't get diagnosed.
or don't get diagnosed? Exactly. So this is obviously a big thing in our humanity. And I think that some of it is physical, chemical imbalance, and some of it is circumstantial, right? And so the challenge for me was I think I was a depressed child. And I grew up on and off depression. I never wanted to be diagnosed bipolar. I've been diagnosed as a depressive. I have been on medication for many, many years, but not to call me bipolar because I don't have those unrealistic fantasies, right? So you talk about that, and maybe I'm in denial. Who knows, right?
What's fascinating, though, is what Mark just said is like when she got that and got the right meds, ta-da,
Yeah.
look at her. I mean, she's
Yeah.
doing amazing,
Yeah.
right? And it's interesting how we don't want a diagnosis of this, and yet it
That's a
might be
good
the
point,
very
Barbara.
answer
Yeah.
to, the fact that you've had a diagnosis of depression forever.
Yes. But you see, that's a good point because I had very bad postnatal depression with both my kids. I was told that gets worse with every child. And that's what they told me.
And we believe it, and
exactly,
we make it even worse.
Exactly, right? And that's part of the journey of self-discovery, right? What we believe and what we allow into our consciousness. But the one thing I do know is that they did try and treat me with lithium, and that didn't work. So lithium did not work for me. It made me even worse, feeling worse. It was just, I didn't feel good. I didn't feel right. So perhaps that's the definitive factor for me. But I certainly have been on antidepressants for years and years and years, and I've tried to go off them. No, because then I just start doing this, right? And I, for the longest time, like you, Mark, was in denial because this was mind over matter. And if everything is mind over matter, I can do this. I can get through this with my mind. And I couldn't. I was hospitalized. And then I had to work through, okay, if this is a body that has chemical processes, and I mean, it's the most incredible body. It's the most incredible vehicle, with all our hormones and our, minerals and, all these different things, the serotonin and all these things that we know are chemical components that make us up. I had to eventually say to myself, okay, there's a chemical imbalance, and these antidepressants help right that. So if I need that to function, then that's what I need to do, because not being able to function is not good just for me, but for my loved ones, for the people around me. Because I remember them all, what can I do for you? And nobody can do anything, right? Nobody can do anything. It's like, I don't know why I'm like this. I love you. I've got everything in my life. I've got beautiful children. I'm, a wonderful husband, but yeah.
And here you are crying.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, that's the reality, right? As a human being, right? We know that there's a power in the universe, infinite, and everything that is created, all things. And so why do we decide that a pill is not of that? Right? So Marg, as you were talking about getting that diagnosis, what was the journey like for you when you got on the right medication and you started to experience a difference? What was that like for you? What was your experience there?
It wasn't a snap changeover.
Yeah.
Perhaps I was able to, I'm trying to think of the time factor, but I guess it really doesn't matter. I'm just talking. Perhaps so I came to Unity, and believe me, when I came to Unity, I didn't want to be going.
Kicking and screaming?
I say I came in kicking and screaming. Yep. And actually, it was the drive to Unity one day was when I almost jumped out of the car. So it was, yeah. But my involvement in unity, it's about the living in unity, not so much about the principles and the whatever that's in the textbook. It's been my experience in living in unity. I slowly became involved. There was something in me that knew I'm a doer. And so what can I do? So I offered to help out in the office. When I first started helping out in the office, I was afraid to use the photocopier. That's how low I was. And if anybody knows me, they know that I'm very much in my head. I'm a very practical person, so I'm not somebody that goes and does things irrationally and whatever. But so I, figure things out. But I was afraid to use the photocopier, and so it was a slow progression. Doing more things in the office, and eventually going on the board, and so on and so on. So does that answer your question? It wasn't a black and white, I had these magic pills and there I shifted into the old me. I guess I slowly created a new me.
Yeah, I think that's a really great way to put it. Well, on that note, let's take a short commercial break. You're watching Out of My Mouth here on the New Thought Media Network, and our guest, Marg Dupuis, normally one of our co-hosts, but today sharing her story with mental health issues. And so we're going to be back in just a moment, so don't go away. More to come.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hepperlin Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Spiritual Center, Kitchener, Om Center for Spiritual Living, La Mesa, Satya Center, Center for Spiritual Living, North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and Center for Spiritual Living, Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for making New Thought Media Network a place to be. Please come be you. And remember, like, share, and subscribe.
And we're back. So,
welcome back. And before we move on, I'd like to invite our producer, Deja, to come into the room and share something with us as well, because I know that this triggers something in her too. So welcome, Deja.
Hi, hello everyone. First of all, Mark, thank you for being brave enough to share your story with us. I really admire you, not only for that, for many, many things, and Cheryl as well for sharing also your story with us. And I can relate with both of us. And for people watching us, that they are having this thoughts or feelings that they don't really know what's going on, please know that you are not alone, that there is help out there. Sometimes we share what is going on with us with people that cannot not understand, people that will judge us, but that doesn't mean that no one will understand. And there's help out there. I have suffered from depression as well many years. I tried to get the right medication, and you already mentioned that it could be emotional, psychological, but also the brain is an organ, just like your stomach or your pancreas or your heart. The thing here is that the symptoms are in the way we think, the way we see life, but that doesn't mean that it's something that we just invented. It's an organ that is damaged, but can be um, fixed with the right medication, and also with other alternatives like, well, meditation, uh, getting along with other kind of people that don't judge you, people that try to understand you, people that encourage you, and not with that people that say, oh, you are lazy, oh, you are not doing enough, oh, everything is in your mind. So please
Yeah.
know that there is help out there, and yeah, don't give up. And I have been struggling as well. I have my ups, I have my downs, but also it has helped me a lot to surround myself with loving beings like the three ladies I'm sharing the screen right now. And so there is help out there, and don't give up. And thank you.
Thank you, Deja.
Thank
Great
you,
reminders.
Deja.
Yeah, good reminders. And absolutely, if anybody's feeling down in the dumps, or just just not wanting to be here today, reach out and call someone.
Yeah. And speaking of call someone, I know a few years back, it was pre-COVID, and I had a slip, and I was feeling quite depressed. And a dear friend of mine called and said, "Hey, do you want to have a coffee?" And I said, "No, thank you. Anyway, I'll pass." And probably a day or two later, there was a knock at the door, and there was somebody standing there, and she said, "Can I have a coffee?" So she sat there with me, and I wasn't going to refuse her. I mean, I wouldn't want to be rude. I could say over the phone or an email, "No, I don't want company." And anyway, Cheryl appeared and just sat in the living room with her coffee. And it is important to be open to support as well. I'm a person that I have a difficulty asking for help. And although I really didn't feel like being social, that act remains with me today.
It's interesting how somebody stepping up in an unusual way like that, where we might consider it overstepping or pushing boundaries, that very thing saved my life. And I was going through a state of depression and was suicidal, had planned everything out. I was done, and my phone rang. And of course, it was back in the day when I wouldn't even consider not answering it. It was like, you got to answer the phone, it's ringing. So as I was heading out the door to take my life, that was the plan. I was interrupted with a phone call, and it happened to be a woman who attended the church I was going to. I didn't know her. We had never officially met. We'd never had a conversation. And she phoned me up and said, "You've been on my mind, and I can't get you off. And I know you don't know me, but I sit 3 rows behind you at church, and you're on my mind." And so I had to call. And I tried to get rid of her. I tried and tried. And finally I broke down into tears and went, oh my God.
Wow. Yeah.
This is somebody who has stepped in because of some inner nudge.
Yeah.
And we can call it whatever we want. I
Mhm.
call it that intuitive knowing and our infinite connection with the absolute, right?
Mhm.
With that, like if we're energy systems, we're all connected.
Mhm.
And she was getting something that was pushing her enough to phone a stranger.
Yeah. Yeah.
Say, what's happening? And eventually I broke down and told her. And of course, still here. So, but,
Lucky
I have
us.
to go in and
Thank
out,
goodness. Yeah.
but I've never felt suicidal since.
Mhm.
That was a very loud, like, holy crow, you're here for a reason. So just
Yeah.
get to it, get to the work. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Life, eh?
Yeah. I wonder if there's anybody, and maybe somebody can put in the chat if they have, who's never experienced a time of depression, even if it was a week, a month. Do you know what I mean?
Day and hour.
Yeah. Biorhythms, right? I haven't learned. I remember many years ago learning about biorhythms and the up and the down and things like that. And we are beings that are impacted by energy, right? We are energy. We have an energy field. So that coming into contact with others, coming into contact with what's going on in the environment, those kind of things, I think naturally will have an effect on most of us. In fact, on all of us. It's just that some of us will be more sensitive to it than others, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think of my dad, and he suffered from depression, unfortunately. And so he received treatment and medication. I think it started with him when he was either 60 or 65, just approaching retirement age. And so he was a very capable man that could do anything, just anything, to somebody who couldn't pick up the use the lawnmower. Like he was incapacitated, and so he received treatment and medication. And then he was also somebody that used the power of his mind. Napoleon Hill, and there's somebody else, that Dale Carnegie and whatever. And so he got to feeling better, and so he stopped the medication. And twice that happened. And the third time, I don't know, maybe 15 years later, when he went through a depression, by the time he reached out for help, it was too late. So the medication he took did no longer helped him, and he never really recovered himself after that. So I say that because he taught me a lesson. I won't walk around with my medication. That's for sure. I just I'm good, and if I need tweaking, then I will listen, and I will also be my own self advocate.
Yeah.
But I've learned from the lesson my dad taught me.
Yeah.
And also, I don't think everybody has depression. I'll mention my son here, and he said this to me, and I know he was not being derogatory. I just know my son and how how he presents, and he was really trying to figure out why, Mom, I don't understand depression. He said, I know when the Senators lose hockey, I know how I feel then, but so like I say, I know there was he was not putting me down at all. He just did not get this concept of
relate.
depression. And he was trying to get something to relate it to.
Yeah.
Depression is an unusual thing because it's such a place of non, like, it's like we've shut down the emotional core in a sense where I don't want to experience extremes either way. So I stay in this place of "Nyeh," and I can't get out of it because I'm actually not willing to let myself feel whatever it is I have, pushed down or whatever, which is why it's so good to talk about these things, because generally there's something that is causing a trigger. But I think it's so important to talk about it and to talk about what's going on. I know for myself, I'm getting more and more where I just say what's what. Like if I'm feeling if I'm feeling angry. And I remember years ago somebody talking about depression and rage and how the two are kind of hand in hand. Our unexpressed rage shows up as depression.
Mm.
And I thought, whoa,
Yeah.
that's something. But of course, bipolar is another thing altogether because
Mm.
it's such a flip flop. And Cheryl, you mentioned your dad would go into a really manic phase, where my dad would go into a very raging phase.
Mm.
So he would get very angry, very depressed, very down, and but the up part wasn't as severe. Like you didn't notice him being as manic
Mm.
as you did on the depression, but there was that swing.
Yeah, my dad had both for sure.
Yeah.
And he fought the lithium. He fought it because he believed that, the side effects weren't worth it. He was experiencing side effects and he didn't want to be on it. So it really was a very tumultuous time in my life because it was up and down, and they put him in an institution. He got arrested. He got beat up. It was just horrible. It was really horrible. And the sad thing is that the last 20 years of his life, he was in a total depression. And he didn't go out. He hardly did anything except stay in his apartment, sleep during the day, watch TV at night. It was just very sad, very, very sad.
You think that our resistance to medication takes us even deeper into the depression? Whereas if we went, oh, this medication, like Marg, you got on the medication, all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but over time, you started feeling much better. And it's like, wow, this is working. I wonder if when somebody is taking a medication and in their mind they're going, I hate this, I don't want this, I don't like this, this isn't what, I think we undo what could possibly be good by putting all this negativity onto the medication itself, rather than going, every single thing in the universe is energy.
Yeah.
And how it's formed into a solid state. But it's all one thing.
And the other sad thing is that he and I, before that, used to have these wonderful spiritual conversations. He was actually one of my, I used to ask questions, and we used to have these talks. So he told me when I was a kid, nothing is real. It's all an illusion. And I was like, oh, well, that means that I'm going to walk through walls one day, and I'm going to, because for me, I'm here to get whatever it is about. And if it's an illusion, I'm going to be able to do these things. And then I realized later on in life, it is all an illusion, because none of us experience the same thing the same way. So what is reality? Right. And so these are the kinds of things that I got from him. And yet at the end, he could not. And I'll tell you something else. And this is how we manifest. His biggest fear was to grow old and be alone.
Mm.
And so it is.
Yeah, that was his biggest fear.
Wow.
And that's exactly what happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. So, Mark, what do you think the biggest win was for you in finally accepting the diagnosis? I mean, you got it, you didn't want it, but you did get around to accepting it. So tell us a little bit about that journey.
Don't know how to answer that, because I think it wasn't a one-time deal
No,
of
of course.
acceptance. I believe, like, as I was preparing to talk today, I recognized there is still, just a little bit of non-acceptance there. The practical part of me is like, okay, yeah, this is the fact. You take the medication and Bob's your uncle, right? I didn't have I had the severe depression. I didn't have the mania, so I didn't get the double whammy. For that, I'm grateful for. If I look back from when I was a child, I can see some behaviors maybe that were a little bit more accentuated. But not like your Hollywood portrayal of what a manic state would be like. It's just slightly elevated. Maybe ask the question in a different way, or ask it again, Barbara.
So your journey to wellness.
Yeah.
How has that manifest? Like when you think about where you were prior to the diagnosis and now where you are with an effective medication that's really working and supporting you, what do you think the overall shift is? Like, how is life today compared to then?
Oh, tons better. And I believe I got to where I am now because I eventually, fairly recently, learned how to say yes. I had the knowing way back then that I couldn't sit in my pity party pot. I was open to coming into a new experience through Unity, even though, like I said, came in kicking and screaming. They weren't going to tell me nothing. And they still don't. Like people at Unity, they still don't tell me anything. I live through it. But my step into, okay, what can I do in the office? What can I help with there? And I continue to do these things. I continue to say yes. I continue to further my education in what can I do next. It's who I am. It's who I've always been. I just do things in a different way now. I'm doing things that I didn't ever think I would do, such as speaking today.
And being part of this team, and
Being part of
I
the
love
team.
that you're saying yes. I think yes is a really good answer. That many of us, because I think sometimes we're saying no to things out of fear, out of guilt or shame, or
I can't do it.
Yeah, I can't do that. Yeah. So I think there's sort of like a low self-esteem almost, like there's no way I'm going to be able to do that. So I'll just say no, because it's going to, like, I think there's a lot of reasons why we say no. So just saying yes, because I remember when you said yes to be on this show, to be a co-host, it was like, yes. Yes, I think so. But here you are. And you've been a great asset to the show, for sure.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I remember too, Barbara, when I said, oh, you know what? I think it's really a good idea if we talk about mental health, blah, blah, blah. Oh, yeah, okay, I'm cool to do that. And then I got thinking, okay, well, I'm not going to have anything to say, really. How am I going to fill an hour, you know? And I know it's not all about me, it's about the conversation, but I had this pressure on myself. Wasn't willing to say no.
Mhm.
And Barbara reached out to me and she said, okay, let's have a conversation, Marg. So we talked maybe
For
10
over an
minutes,
hour.
maybe it was an hour and a half. I don't know. So then I was like, yeah, okay, we do have enough to talk about.
Mhm. Mhm.
Well, it is such an important topic. And I think, when I look around me today and I look at the world and the condition it's in, people are afraid, they're tired, there's just so much overwhelm.
Mhm.
And then there's guilt, shame, all that piled on just for fun.
Mhm.
And we wonder why we've got this mental health, probably crisis
Yeah.
at the moment. And the only way to get through it is to get real about it and start having conversations and sharing our stories and helping each other to realize that it doesn't define us. It is
Mhm.
an aspect of an experience we're having. It's not who we are. And I think that's an important part of the message that people need to know. I mean, you're still you.
Mhm.
I'm still Cheryl. I'm still
Mhm.
me.
Mhm.
Deja's still Deja. It's like we're
Yeah.
all good.
Yeah.
And we experience
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
I think it's really good to have the conversations to um, the word came normalize it. It came to
Absolutely.
my mind, right? Because it is such a widespread experience. And so it's really more about how do we be with that and how do we support each other and how do we, look at some of the systemic issues about, where and how depression can start when it becomes emotional and psychological. Because there's both and, right? And I think really being more mindful of connecting, of saying yes, like you've said, Marg, because I can tell you most of the time that I was in depression, I didn't want to go anywhere. I didn't want to see anyone. I didn't want to speak to anyone,
Yeah.
right? So also being aware of people and what they're going through and maybe, yes, taking a risk and overstepping the mark, let them throw you out, but sometimes maybe they won't. They'll just open the door and say, come in, right? So I think it's all those things that we
Yeah.
need to really contemplate and think about and contribute to, right? Because it's not a them and us issue. It's ours. It's ours, and it's about who we are and how we be, not just as the experience of it, but as somebody who is a community outreach person, a community member, a friend, all those things.
So on that note, Marg, what was it? I mean, Cheryl came and knocked on your door, ordered a coffee from you, and being a nice person, you couldn't tell her to get the hell out. So,
Exactly.
so you had to let her in.
Yeah.
What was going through your mind when you opened the door going,
Holy shit. What am I going to do now? Well, to be truthful, I really couldn't appreciate that what was happening for me. Do I appreciate Cheryl as a friend? Definitely I do. But it was a chore. It was a
Yes.
chore for me to open that door. It was a chore for me to get the coffee, but I'm a, gracious host. So therefore I'm going to get that damn coffee for her. Geez. And
And hopefully she won't stay too long.
I know. I was like,
It was like me on the phone, like, okay, I gotta go. I got somewhere to be. Gotta go, right? Yeah.
But Cheryl was not pushy with conversation. Although we did have some conversation, she didn't insist on me engaging in conversation, which is not normal for no. So she was.
But she understands depression, and so she
Yeah.
understood.
She did, yeah. She was very respectful and sat there with her coffee and occasionally would say something, and eventually I relaxed into it and later recognized the importance
of it.
her presence, and I think just later also recognizing that I did need her.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well, we have 4 minutes left, if you can believe it.
Mhm.
This could be a 2-hour show. So what
No, I'm
what final thought would you like to leave people with today, Marg?
Thank you for listening to me. Don't be afraid to reach out for help. I just think it's important to share, and I don't want to give anybody direction, but I'm just grateful to have had this platform and hope it helps someone.
Thank you, Penny. And what about you, Cheryl? What final thought or what would you like to leave people with today?
I think, first of all, grateful, Marg, for us to all have this conversation and for your being willing to be on the podium, to say. Thank you for being courageous enough to do that. I think for me, I find that the more you talk to people and the more you open up, even just one-on-one, the more you find you have in common.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? And so often I'll speak about something and somebody else will say, oh, me too. Oh, me too. Right? It's a different Me Too movement. But yeah, I would encourage people to open up a little bit more and to take that risk of being vulnerable and sharing some of those things with others.
Absolutely.
Those struggles, yeah.
Because look what we found out today. All of us have a bipolar depression connection.
Yeah.
Wow, that all fit together.
Mm-hmm.
The thing, what you said, Cheryl, is exactly right. As we talk to other people, we start to realize we have a whole lot more in common than we have that's different. And I think having those conversations, we start to see that life really is happening to and through all of us. And so the only thing I want to say is if you're experiencing any of this and somebody reaches out to say, hey, how you doing? Don't say fine.
Yeah, we know what that stands for, right?
We know what that stands for. So answer the call and know that it's a remarkable gift that if you're ready to receive it, could be quite transformative.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Marg. You are such a gift. Thank you, Cheryl, for being such a rock star. Deja and Maple, thank you for producing. And Deja, thank you so much for sharing. You really are a remarkable gift in all our lives. And you definitely make this show a whole lot better because it couldn't function without you. And on that note, all I have to say is stay well, take care of your mental health, physical health, and be the very best you can be by honoring the path you walk. Thank you, everyone. You're watching Out of My Mouth, and you're on the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you all next time. Bye for now.
On behalf of everyone at New Thought Media Network, thank you for being a member of our virtual family. Your financial contributions help share the New Thought message with people from around the world. Please visit and contribute at www.ntmedia.org/donate. New Thought Media Network. Come be you. And please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, peace and blessings.